Mr. Mark Selby, how are you, sir?
Very good, Mr. Matthew Gordon. Just got back from in Indonesia last week.
Nice.
With 1,000 other people.
Just with 1,000 other people.
Yes.
And what were you doing there?
So it's the nickel conference globally now. Shanghai Metals Market put it on. I think it's a fifth year now. And it's obviously with Indonesia being the center of the nickel market, it's become the go-to conference. So it was very, very valuable. Long way to get there, but a very valuable use of time. So,
and what were the big topics of discussion?
Yeah, so the big piece is two things. One, ore grades. There's been lots of news, obviously, since the beginning of the year around quotas. But the point that I've been making is around the underlying ore grade stuff. And so, what was interesting is in conversations with traders, producers. It's very clear that we saw that big drop, almost 10% in ore grades last year. 7 or 8% drop. And right now, so they dropped from 1.66 in 2024 to 1.52 in 2025. And what was curious with the comments was literally, it's tough to find, volumes of material that's, that are traded market-wise north of 1.4%. And most of the material you see in the market is 1.3 to 1.4%, which explains why all of a sudden you can ship even more stuff in the Philippines because, that was quote considered too low grade before. And so, that makes sense why we're seeing higher volumes of the stuff because there just isn't that much stuff in Indonesia. So, that was the point was even with your quotas, this drop in grade is really going to, have an impact on costs and availability. And then the other piece of it is the government basically has a sovereign wealth group that they're going to route not just nickel, but they're going to route a bunch of other commodities through. And I think what it is to give the government, again, people were talking about motives and stuff, but I think what I heard and what made the most sense was, just in terms of making sure, particularly offshore Chinese companies, are managing the, that the government are seeing the transactions happen, seeing the tax revenue that's supposed to go to the government actually go to the government. So, that seems to get now, again, anytime you have a big government agency get in the middle of a bunch of market transactions, that isn't always good for the market. So, we'll see what happens. I don't know, Indonesia, there's been some pressure on the currency and interest rates and stuff over the last few weeks. I haven't dove into what's happening there to see if some of the rhetoric around that is what's driving that. But it's been interesting to see. And again, the fact that Indonesia is, I've talked about many times, motivation wise for them, when you have a balance of payments issue, when you have a budget deficit issue, going after and finding ways to make revenue from a natural resource is makes total sense to do. So and again, we've seen a big sell-off the last few days here across the base metal complex and across a bunch of sectors more broadly. But nickel's held up pretty well. We're sort of just broken out at the bottom of that 18,500 to 20,000 range that we spent the last few months. But the good part is the sort of the non-publicly traded stuff, the NPI and stand-up prices, they've held up pretty well over the past few weeks, and we're in maximum ore availability time out of the Philippines. So, expect things to, we have seen ore prices soften up a little bit, but, the fact that end is very anchored, I think, it's going to set up for an even more interesting fall. So, we'll see.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, just in terms of that agency or that trading group that the government's setting up, yes, it allows them to collect, I guess, taxes, get some revenue going, or at least more control of the revenue. But it's also that component where you said to me in the past that maybe the Indonesian government's incentivized to kind of keep the price around 20,000 and not let it run a bit. Does that agency allow them to control that pricing environment more?
Not so much the pricing environment. It's more the quota system. Well, they'll do is just monitor the mines ministry will basically, look to, they haven't allocated all the quota that they want, and they'll allocate a little bit more, a little bit less, to keep, again, for the next year or two, you'll see them in that $18,000 to $21,000 price range. But once they get comfortable that that's not going to cost them to lose a lot of market share, which I believe the case, that's the case, you'll see them, get comfortable to push it up another level, and the other part is, fundamentally, cost structures are going up, sulfur prices, up another little notch this week. So, there is a lot of cost pressure, and even today with prices $4,000 or $5,000 a ton higher, a lot of people are making the miners are making a lot more money. We're getting the ore prices through, but the rest of the chain isn't really making a bunch of money. So we'll see how this all plays out going forward.
Okay. Well, in terms of those quotas, obviously that's affecting a few people, like Weda Bay, for instance. They've run out of quota.
Yeah, they shut down. They said they were going to shut down by May if they didn't get any more quota, and they have shut the mining down. There's again, there's a little bit of push and pull where they were fined pretty substantial, multi-$100 million fine for some violations that they have not paid. So rumor is that if they pay some of the fine, they might get some more quota. But again, we'll see how that plays out. And again, there's still quota available from what the government had said they were going to toss out. So we'll see how that all plays out over the next few months here. But again, managing supply, want prices higher, and fundamentally you're seeing the quality of the ore decline pretty significantly, which is is basically forcing them to manage what's left. So
okay, well, let's talk about this. So I guess the knock-on effects of all of this behavior. We're saying potentially some M&A.
Yeah.
We've got our friends Lifestone Metals in the headlines. I know they put out a little release saying this. They can't comment, and they'll let us know when they know.
Yeah.
But what's the story there?
Yeah, so it's great. I mean, again, good to see some M&A in the nickel space. Ligend, which is a Hong Kong-based group, is rumored to be looking at making an acquisition there. Again, beautiful high-grade deposit. Was discovered originally back in the 80s, and the Lifestone team's done a good job advancing that project forward to a construction decision. Again, that's the way you force the market to make a bid for your company is to push it as hard and as fast as you can, so that it gets more and more expensive for people to move forward. So it's good to see that. Also saw in Madagascar, you saw a group, basically buy out one of the Korean companies, to look at, taking a stake at that Mbatavi operation. There's been rumors that, some of the other Chinese companies are now looking into some of these places. Again, the key thing here, I'm not nervous about that, that Indonesia really is the Saudi Arabia of nickel resources. There are laterite deposits that have been around and have been operated in the past, but number one, they're easy to high grade, and the resources themselves aren't anywhere close to the kind of scale or grade that we see in Indonesia. So yeah, you may see some marginal increases in production there. We need more production from other places, but any of these things aren't going to disrupt the nickel market longer term.
Right. Okay. And another potential. I'm going to say these words. Bit of M&A. We've got some Trumponomics going on here.
Oh, geez.
Sherritt Group.
Yeah. So poor Sherritt. They were always, again, had to deal with the operation in Cuba. They had sanctions that have been around for a long time in the terms of the Helms-Burton Act. But the Trump government ratcheted it up with all the rhetoric around Cuba that caused them to, they lost their auditor had to resign. CFO resigned, so they've now been rebuilding that, which is great. But surprise, surprise, a Trump, a private equity group that has some Trump links is all of a sudden, stepping up to make a bid for 45 or 50% of the company. I haven't heard much more on it since. We'll see where that lands. But, again, not surprised to see that's the outcome. And again, in the outcome, it has to be, it's a U.S. political decision around, who gets to own that asset and, what sanctions end up around that asset. So, we'll see what happens from this point forward. So.
Right. And just sticking with again the U.S. front, homeland as well.
It's good. Yeah. So on nickel, obviously with some links there, they've did a deal with Westwind Elements, which has been looking to build a carbonyl nickel refinery in the U.S. So Homeland as a possible potential source of feed into a U.S. based refinery, gives them the opportunity to talk up an end-to-end complex there. Again, being able to build or process something up in the Northwest U.S. Is always going to be a bit challenging, but that is one of the few places where you can find nickel in the U.S. other than Michigan, Minnesota, area. So, we'll see what happens on that front as they continue to push that project forward.
Okay. And obviously, I think I'd be remiss not to talk about you. Obviously, project continues to move along. You put out a little announcement yourself this week.
Yeah, we raised doing a $5 million flow through. We've done sort of a tuck-in raise here, every year or so, just again to continue to sort of advance the regional district and the 8+ resources that we have there. So we've got a group that we've worked with multiple times, and they stepped up. So it's nice to have that very simple, straightforward ways of raising capital at a premium to your current price, which is great. And then the other announcement was around a group out of MIT, GeoRedox, that we've been working with, and we formally announced that they're going to basically look at using their process on our rocks in Timmins and be looking to inject a well later this year, where they'll basically by injecting water underneath certain conditions, it will allow the rocks to start to produce hydrogen. Again, just like our IPT carbonation process, which is founded on some pretty fundamental science, this process is also pretty fundamentally based. People haven't gone there. There's other groups that are looking at using solvents and some other catalysts in there. The nice part is, the GeoRedox guys are using just water. So, from an environmental perspective, that is great to see. I don't think we'd want to play around with injecting catalysts into something, given the water table in the area, and how important that is. But very happy to work with this group. They're a bunch of MIT guys and ex-Shell guys. So, great pedigree, and we did great things with the IBT carbonation. So we'll see how the geological hydrogen approach goes moving forward. So
nice. Okay. Right. Bit more company news. We've got Next Metals out there.
Yeah. So they've been going strong in Botswana, in more high grade copper nickel. Again, as I pointed out last time, it's pretty deep. These holes were 1,600 meters deep. That's a long way down anywhere in the world. But hey, we'll see what happens when they publish. Again, there's existing mine workings that do go down quite a ways, but you still have to go down further to get that mineral. So we'll see what happens when they eventually put it out, updated pre-feasibility study on that deposit. So and again, $6 a pound copper, that definitely helps in terms of the economics.
Yeah, obviously the price is always going to help. Next, First Atlantic Nickel, I'm looking at. They're really going some at the moment.
Yeah, no, kudos to them in terms of marketing. The share price has rocketed higher. They also put an announcement this out. They're working with another group, with I think University of Colorado backing, and some group there looking to also produce hydrogen. They have a warite deposit similar to what they have with FPX Nickel, who did. We did a bunch of work at Dumont on terms of being able to recover warite. FPX with a warite only deposit, did a great job sort of pushing the metallurgy work forward to really understand how to recover that, how to create a high grade concentrate from it. But it's I haven't talked value wise too often about things, but right now, First Atlantic with no resource, no network, whatever, is actually trading at a higher value than FPX. And so again, I would caution people in terms of enthusiasm, around, again, momentum can go a long way, but there needs to be some fundamental work that needs to get done to really backfill that valuation. Again, a warite's a great mineral. It doesn't, just so people, based on some of the hype, it doesn't cure cancer, but it is a pretty decent feed in a bunch of applications. Now, to make a high grade of warite concentrate, you have to, again, the approach that FPX is used is you end up with a fairly fine concentrate. To be able to use that in a metallurgical facility, in a furnace, you typically, you end up with fine particles. Some percentage of that ends up in the dust handling system, and people don't necessarily like it. We're taking our concentrate to a metallic shot form, which doesn't have any of those dust loss issues. And in fact, the value of the dust loss more than pays for the cost to transform it to a metal shot. So even though they make big noise about not having to have a smelter, sometimes you can actually add more value in a very cost-effective way than being able to use it directly. And again, they're sort of talking about it as a direct use in the battery industry. It needs to go through a processing plant to get rid of all the iron that's there. It's probably, ore is great, and nickel iron for stainless and alloy steel applications is great. But from a battery perspective, it's got way more iron than pretty much any feed that goes directly into a precursor plant today. So it also has to go through a refinery step. So we'll see what happened there. Again, if you're looking to step into First Atlantic, the key piece here, it takes you a couple of weeks to do the met work on the samples. The challenge with any ultramafic deposit is understanding the recoverability of the mineralization that's there. It's great that you have either hazelwoodite or aurorite or pentlandite that's there. The key question is it at a particle size that's easy to recover and produce a high-grade concentrate? FPX has done all that work, did a great job putting all that work together, and First Atlantic hasn't done that yet. So guys, get going with it. Again, I hope you can more than prove me wrong, and we've got another great ultramafic deposit, aurorite deposit, get going. But you need to do the work to support the valuation at this point in time.
Right, there we go. Heard it here first, folks. Okay, but I think as generally, what I want to say before you go is it's nice to see the nickel market getting the torchlight shone on it for the first time in a while. People are starting to understand the market dynamics, supply demand fundamentals, and also trying to understand who can actually deliver into that space. So
the tonne at Indonesia last week was great, and pretty much anyone who cares about the nickel market was in Jakarta. So it was good to be in that environment once again. So
brilliant. Well, look, Mark, I know you've got to go, so we'll see you soon.